common words you'll hear up at Stormont is smile please, because your photograph is about to be taken. Apparently they're spending £1,000 a week on photographs being taken at Stormont. The photographers, it's costing over 60 grand a year. How do we know this? Well, Timothy Gaston from the TUV has been asking, and he's on the line, one of our MLAs, Timothy Gaston. Timothy, good morning.
Morning, Frank.
Why did you ask the question in the first place? Are you just seeing lots of photographs being taken professionally at Stormont?
Well, Frank, I look at it, the TUV really is the watchdog of what happens in Stormont. And following on, you had me on a number of months ago regarding the spend in hospitality. And the next stage of that, to try and unearth what Stormont's priorities are, was to look at their spend in photography. And certainly within that 60,000, we have to bear in mind that the Executive Office to date have failed to respond to tell us how much they have spent in photography. And one would imagine the reason they haven't released that figure is because they're embarrassed, and it's probably a lot higher than the majority of the other departments.
Do you feel that photographs could be taken on basically an iPhone at this present minute in time and used as opposed to hiring the professionals?
Well, day in, day out in the chamber, we constantly hear this patter from ministers that budgets are tight, we haven't money for X, Y and Z. And I find that once you start scratching away the surface, what they're spending in photography, what they're spending in hospitality, it really leads me to consider where their priorities are. Now, in these figures, and it's been reported in the Belfast Telegraph today, that, in the first instance, the ministers seek to get in-house, to source in-house photography. That doesn't take account for the figures that has been released to myself. That is only for when they're going to get an external person to come in and take the photo. So my question is, why don't they get more in-house photography, which isn't an additional cost to the ratepayer, and adding further burden to what they have to fork out for?
But is it not down to convenience? But because, I know you've itemised here, Gordon Lyon's department, it's almost 17,000 since last February. Naomi Long's department is just over 11,000. Caoimhe Archibald, nearly 10,000. Paul Given, nearly 8,000. Andrew Muir, just over 5,000. Mike Nesbitt, over 5,000 as well. Liz Kimmins, 3,500. John O'Dowd, just over 2,000. So obviously there would be times when it's more convenient to get it done professionally, or there's a need to get it done professionally. Maybe they're away from base, so the in-house people aren't available.
Well, absolutely. Everything in moderation, Frank, is what I would say. And where it appears that there is some ministers in some departments that moderation doesn't come into it, that they seem to just go for the external photographer at every opportunity. I simply cannot understand why, for example, picking the Department of Justice, why they have spent nearly £11,500 in photography. Gordon Lyons, yes, he has a bigger department, but even still £17,000. Yes, tourism is very important to promote Northern Ireland, absolutely. But at the same time, these are extravagant figures, and it just points to me that the priorities are in the wrong places.
And how much do you think Michelle and Emma will have spent?
Well, I have no idea. I look forward to getting the clarification from the Executive Office, but this is an office that is knee deep in secrecy. It took me 8 months. We've only just got the figures for the trip last year to Washington, which was an eye-watering 54,000 for 4 days. And let's bear in mind that for that 4-day trip, they took a photographer with them to capture the moments where they were smiling at each other. So I have no doubt that when the Executive Office figure comes out, that it will be an extravagant figure and it will surprise a lot of people. Like, my job in Stormont here is to ensure that the public are well informed what their money has been spent on. So when they hear that there's no money for waiting lists, no money for fixing potholes, schools can't even afford in some cases to paint their walls, they have to fundraise for it, I'm starting to unearth, well, there's thousands and thousands being spent behind the scenes. If they were acting in moderation, there certainly is savings there.
But these thousands that you described from behind the scenes, for example, on photography, people are being employed as a result of that. I'm sure it's not just one photographer. There are people who are paying their mortgage as a result of having a contract with a Stormont department.
Well, that remains to be seen, but if they have in-house photography and they're employing people within the Stormont civil service structure, my question would be, well, how much are they using that person, and how easy is it for them to go and get an external photographer? So there is jobs, linked with in-house photography. My question is, are they utilising them as much as they should?
And do you ask the question yourself when you're getting your photograph taken at Stormont? Are you in-house, or are you costing extra on the budget? Would you walk away from a photo shoot if it was someone from outside?
Well, the only photo shoots I've got was on my first day through the building, where somebody for my security pass took me picture on an iPhone. Apart from that, it's I don't get my photograph taken unless somebody's snapping it on the way past. Say if I'm at an event, like yesterday it was the Ulster Farmers Union event that they brought a photographer with them. So I'm certainly not getting my picture taken at the expense of the ratepayer.
And in the meantime, do you think, the taxpayer, do you think in the meantime that those who would have more representation than the TUV at Stormont are going to listen, or do they see you replacing Jim Allister really as the little terrier nipping at their heels?
Well, I have no idea how they look at me. All I do is, conviction-led, I come to Stormont to raise the questions that others shy away from, and by highlighting this spend, it's putting a marker down on the ministers in each department, that when they are coming to the chamber and saying there's no money for this, there's no money for that, well, we have figures for hospitality, we have figures for photography, of how much they're actually spending and wasting. Everything has its place in moderation, but Stormont doesn't do moderation.
All right, okay, that's your analysis. Timothy Gaston, I appreciate your time this